Well guys, I think we are seeing the final outcome of Sweden's liberal policies. Their approach to lockdown might have been right, but their approach to some other important things you could say has been a disaster. Many of you would have seen various reports over the months, mainly from individuals on the ground, showing the absolute insanity going on there between rival gangs of doctors, nurses, engineers and scientists. Well, that is what they are if you ask the media anyway. Now the same is also true in France and many other places, but in Sweden we actually have the Prime Minister coming out and admitting they have got it wrong and might be looking to roll it back. Now that stance is not surprising when reports claim 58% of crime in Sweden is committed by migrants and the most heinous crimes are naturally on the rise alongside that figure. Now it won't be a shock to any of us, but apparently it is a bit of a shock to the Swedish people who have been royally shafted by their government's lunatic policies. Of course, the government's sudden U-turn on this could be because public sentiment is changing and making them actually plan to put the brakes on immigration. Now there is evidence suggesting that the government actually plans to stick by this because they have so far rejected people from the destroyed Greek camps that the EU is currently trying to send all over Europe, which is actually what's picked up in the article we're going to look at. So let's take a look at this one here from a website called Remix News. It headlines, "No more migrants, Sweden changes its asylum policy," which is obviously rather bold, but considering what is said by the Prime Minister down below, it could well be true. Sweden, a country with one of the most liberal asylum policies in the world, is drastically changing its attitude towards migrants. Although the country will provide material aid to Greece, it has decided not to accept any refugees from the burned Moria camp or other Greek islands. Unlike Germany, which has agreed to take 1,500, Sweden has thus joined Austria, Hungary, Poland, Czech Republic and Slovakia, which refused to accept migrants from the camp, writes Czech news portal Novinky. So that there is rather shocking if you ask me. Usually Sweden are one of the first to say send them all here. Apparently not anymore, and good on them. The Swedish people will be safer without them being there, as the stats will show in a moment. The article continues, "It's not clear whether the change of course in asylum policy concerns only the problem of relocating the 12,500 people from the destroyed Greek camp, or whether Sweden is changing its approach to migration in general. The fact is, however, that the topic of migration dominated the 2018 Swedish elections, and Prime Minister Stefan Löfven is now under pressure. As Swedish media points out, his minority government coalition with the Green Party is the weakest in 70 years. Because I guess when a Liberal's wife is being attacked in the street by one of these migrants, their attitudes might slowly change alongside the public, which is obviously going to be against this. But we all know that governments don't give a shit about what people want. They essentially do whatever they feel is best for them at the time." It continues, "In 2015, Sweden recorded over 160,000 asylum applications, which was the highest number per capita in Europe. Sweden, along with Germany, was one of the most sought-after destinations for refugees. At the time, the country was proud of its liberal approach. My Europe does not build walls," said Prime Minister Stefan Löfven at the time. Well, your Europe is now in a shit state, much like your country it appears. After 5 years, the country faces a dramatic increase in crime and failures in its integration efforts. Imagine my fucking shock at either of them. If migration is so strong that integration is no longer successful, we risk further problems, said Prime Minister Löfven last week. Well, you should have thought about that, you complete and utter idiot, before you let this shit show occur. How many Swedes have suffered because of your incompetence over this? We certainly know a lot more Swedish women have been suffering because of his policy to allow these people in. Thankfully though, he appears to be stopping that now, though I doubt he will actually go through with it. It continues, "Sweden struggles with the spread of gang-related crime in socially disadvantaged suburbs. For example, since the beginning of this year, 27 people have died during the shootings between criminal organisations. Almost all the victims were young men and members of migrant gangs," wrote the German newspaper Frankfurter Rheinschaft Daily, which writes that the growth in clan violence has shifted the discourse in the country. Deputy Police President Matt Luffing's televised appearance dropped like a bomb in Sweden last month, where he described a systemic threat of migrant gang clashes in the country. Wibby's interview hotly debated for weeks. Yeah, because anytime someone comes out and criticises anything to do with migrants, they instantly get called racist, and therefore it's hotly debated for weeks because the left goes into absolute shit fits. He continues, "These clans have come to Sweden solely to organise crime. They work to create power, they have a great capacity for violence, and they want to make money. And they do that through drug crimes, violent crimes and extortion," said Luffing, who made remarks during an interview on ECOT's Saturday programme on Swedish radio, which naturally the police are really going to know this information, they are going to see what's happening, and they could well be the source of the information we have down below. And despite a welcoming attitude in 2015, the attitudes of Swedes are also changing, with a majority of them saying they want to reduce immigration according to polling research. Furthermore, the number of sexually motivated attacks is also on the rise, and no-go zones, which are areas barricaded off to civil or military authorities, are expanding. Because as we know, when you let this level of immigration happen, there is naturally going to be some people that will try to enrich your women, and they certainly won't be asking for permission because they consider them to be lower than themselves. And this happens literally everywhere where this lunacy is allowed to happen, including in the UK, as we've covered many times on this channel. It continues, Sweden has some of the worst statistics on rape in Europe, with 73 per 100,000 citizens reporting a case of rape in 2017, representing a 24% increase in the last decade. So let me tell you, that is no small amount, and I actually wonder what the percentage of increase in migrants has been over that same period. I would guarantee it has been a fuckload. It goes on, in contrast, Hungary and Poland, both countries which have been opposed to mass migration, have seen dramatically lower rape rates in the country, even when accounting for different methods of reporting. Hungary's rate is 3.9 per 100,000 citizens reporting the crime of rape in the country, while Poland's rate is even lower at 3.2 per 100,000. Going to show, if you ask me, that Poland and Hungary have certainly got it right. Everywhere else, I would bet, has made it a complete and utter clusterfuck, like Sweden, the UK, France, and the rest of them. The fight against criminal gangs is facing severe difficulties, and according to Swedish sociology Goran Adamson, 58% of the perpetrators of crimes committed in 2017 were migrants, which is something I said earlier in the video. That is a hell of a lot of crime for ethnic minorities to be producing, let me tell you that. When the migration is to such an extent that the integration no longer works, it is clear there will be social tension in society, and that is not good, said Loughran in a television interview, which we actually heard a bit of earlier on, but I guess that is the full quote of what he actually said. It finishes up with, his words are being seen as a sign that serious mistakes have been made in Swedish integration efforts. No, they were made by importing these people into the country in the first place. These people are not interested in integrating, as we know, they're interested in taking what they want, raping the women, and essentially the country as well. Of course, not all of them, but certainly a proportion that has taken the crime rate up so much. And the Prime Minister has now realised he is presiding over a complete and utter shit show. This of course is what happens when snivelling shitweasels have the positions of power.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors. Slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires. And that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going, and we are glad to be going. We're off.